Hello, and welcome to the 2025-2026 Program Monitoring Validation Training for the Title I Part C Migrant Education Program Training on the Migrant Parent Advisory Council or PAC requirement. Legal disclaimer. This presentation is intended solely to provide general information and guidance to the Texas LEAs, ESCs, non-project subgrantees, and participating private schools receiving equitable services. The content in this presentation reflects the Texas Education Agency's current understanding of statute and applicable federal guidance. The content on this presentation is subject to change as a result of future guidance and other updates provided by federal agencies with regulatory oversight of these programs. The presentation does not constitute legal advice, and entities are, thereof, advised to seek legal counsel regarding this information and guidance provided in this presentation before acting upon the information provided. AI disclaimer. The Texas Education Agency does not permit third-party recording or the use of artificial intelligence summary services during its grants-related trainings. Attendees of TA's grant-related trainings may not use AI services, language models, applications, interfaces, or assistance to attend, review, or record the trainings. TEA further prohibits any person or entity from using the information included in its grants-related trainings to train AI technologies. Any attendees of TA's grant-related trainings who violates this prohibition may be removed from the training and may be barred from attending future grant-related trainings. At this point, we would like to highlight some of the resources available on the ESA Program Monitoring Validation webpage. In this page, you can find the different guidance documents, training slides, and training videos related to each requirement. Additionally, Education Service Centers can provide the following support. Complementary technical assistance and trainings are available from each regional ESC. The ESC contact list link to the TME portal is located under the contact information on the right side of the Title I Part C website here at TEA. Documentation requested. Documenting overall compliance for a program requirement may require several forms of documentation to be maintained locally and available upon request by TEA and/or an auditor. To ensure overall compliance with program requirements, LEA should refer to the program guide and/or other program-related resources that reference the multiple forms of documentation required to be maintained locally. The documentation requested for submission during the validation process may not include all the forms of documentation that are required to be maintained locally. Migratory Parent Advisory Council, or PAC. Migratory Parent Advisory Council, or PAC. According to Section 1304C3, it assures that each such application shall also include assurances that in the planning and operating of programs and projects at both the state and local agency operating level, there is consultation with parents of migratory children, including parent advisory councils, for programs not less than 1 year in duration, and that all such programs and projects are carried out in a manner that provides for the same parent involvement as is required for programs and projects under Section 1116, unless extraordinary circumstances make such provision impractical and in a format and language understandable to parents. Meeting documentation requested. Standard documentation can include meeting agendas, meeting notes and minutes, sign-in sheets, or electronic attendance rosters, as well as meeting invites and communication. Meeting documentation. Documentation for virtual meetings is acceptable. Given the increased use of virtual meeting environments, participant rosters that include the meeting title, meeting date, and stakeholder names and roles would be acceptable substitutes for the more traditional sign-in sheets. This eliminates the need of a participant signature. Documentation requirement for 1.1 PAC meeting agendas. The acceptable documentation is a maximum of 2 sample agendas for MEP Parent Advisory Council meetings. As mentioned before, the acceptable documentation for item 1.1 is a maximum of 2 sample PAC meeting agendas from the prior school year. Issues that may result in an improvement needed status are the following. Audible documentation requested was not submitted. Documentation submitted does not reference the PAC meetings, and documentation submitted was not for activities that took place in the prior year. Item 1.2, PAC notes and minutes. This is the documentation requirement. The acceptable documentation for this requirement is a maximum of 2 sample meeting notes or minutes that capture meaningful consultation during the MEP Advisory Council meeting. Again, we really want to emphasize that these notes or minutes have to capture meaningful consultation. For item 1.2, issues that may result in an improvement needed status are the following. Audible documentation requested was not submitted. Documentation submitted does not reference the PAC notes or minutes. Documentation does not show evidence of meaningful consultation, or the documentation submitted was not for activities that took place in the prior school year. Item 1.3, documentation of attendance. The acceptable documentation for this item is a maximum of 2 sample documentation of attendance for the MEP Parent Advisory Council meetings, for example, sign-in sheets or electronic attendance rosters. Issues that may result in an improvement needed status for item 1.3 are the following. Audible documentation requested was not submitted. Documentation submitted does not include evidence of PAC attendance, or the documentation submitted was not for activities that took place in the prior year. Item 1.4. Documentation that meetings are offered in times that parents of migratory children could attend, and that the meetings are conducted in a language that the parents could understand or that a translation is provided as needed. The acceptable documentation for this item are the following. A maximum of 2 sample communications regarding options for meeting times, dates, and modality, or copies of meeting invitations. Issues that may result in an improvement needed status for item 1.4 are the following. Audible documentation requested was not submitted. Documentation submitted does not include evidence of the PAC communication that shows evidence of options of the meeting times and modality, or documentation submitted was not for activities that took place in the prior year. Item 1.5. If no PAC has been established due to no participation, the following must be readily available. Evidence to show that efforts have been made to establish a PAC, but due to factors such as extreme geographical distance, low numbers of identified migratory families within the LEA, etc., a PAC has not been established. The acceptable documentation for this item is the following. A maximum of 2 sample communications regarding options for meeting times, dates, and modality, and meeting invites, or a unique student count report from TXNGS. Issues that may result in an improvement needed status for item 1.5. The audible documentation requested was not submitted. Documentation submitted does not include evidence that efforts have been made to establish a PAC, or the documentation submitted was not for activities that took place in the prior year. Additional guidance. Documentation requested is for a maximum of 2 migratory PAC meetings held during the 2024-2025 school year. The documentation submitted should be for all the requested documentation for the same meeting. For example, at a minimum, if selected for this item, LEAs would submit the following for meeting 1. 1.1 would be the PAC meeting agenda. 1.2 would be the PAC meeting notes. 1.3 would be the documentation of attendance. And 1.4 would be documentation of when the meetings were offered. If the meeting occurred, you will provide the following documentation. For 1.1, again, the PAC meeting agendas. For 1.2, the meeting notes. For 1.3, documentation of attendance. And for 1.4, documentation of the meetings offer. If no PAC was established, which is 1.5, then the documentation should support that efforts were made, but due to factors, a PAC was not established. Resources and support. The following resources are available for LEAs to review prior to submitting documentation for the selected PMV requirements. Please take advantage of these documents to ensure that the district is informed of the overall process for program monitoring validations and all program-specific resources. The resources available are overall process resources are the 2024-2025 PMV Process Handbook, instructions for submitting documentation, training videos and training slides, and navigating the Smartsheet WorkApp system video. Additionally, for program-specific resources, we have guidance documents for each program requirement, training videos and training slides for each program requirement. And this is all available on the ESA Program Monitoring Validation webpage. These are the requirements for the Title I Part C Migrant Education Program as it relates to the PAC. We hope that you will find this information useful. Here's our contact information. Please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. Thank you. And here are the Title I Part C contact information at the EA.